Officially, good morning, everyone. My name is John Schaefer. I'm the Associate Director for Graduate Student Success and Professional Development with the Graduate School. And thank you for joining me on this Saturday morning. We're going to be talking about the thesis and dissertation formatting and final submission guidelines. So we really break down the information for you, or I really break down the information for you. So let me go ahead and share my screen and get the presentation started. Okay, so presentation overview, the things that we're going to be going over today generally are first a general overview of thesis and dissertation information. We're going to talk about formatting details. I will walk you through the templates, both the standard template and the 3-essay template. We'll be talking about resources for formatting assistance. And then finally, of course, we'll talk about final submission information for you. This information does not change from semester to semester. The only thing that changes is the deadline, which of course for each semester, and that can be found on the graduate school website. Everything else remains standard. So let's talk about a general overview for thesis and dissertation. So of course, to find out all the information for thesis and dissertation submission, you can visit the graduate school website, graduateschool.utsa.edu. Click on thesis dissertation under current students. And in that area, it'll have access to the templates that you can download. There are preparation guidelines and FAQs and help documents that you can also download. You don't obviously have to download them. They're also just simply available to view. You'll also find the deadlines there. So we do have the deadlines for this fall semester. We have not put up the spring deadline yet. So for spring 2023. But normally, the deadlines usually fall on the first Friday of, depending on the semester you're graduating. So the first Friday of December, the first Friday of May, or the first Friday of August. And deadlines are always 3 p.m. on that day. In this area, you'll also find final requirements for submitting to ProQuest and any required forms. And then the thesis dissertation officer contact info. That in general, there's 2 people that work on the final submissions with the graduate school. One of them is myself, and the other one is Lily Castaneda. So I'm the primary, and then she assists me and also acts as my backup. So final deadlines, the submission deadline for the deadline documents are due to ProQuest by the posted deadline. Most details or more details on the submission process we'll talk about later. As I mentioned, the general rule is the first Friday of December, May, or August, and the deadline is always at 3 p.m. For the purposes of not dating this presentation, is that I'm not going to include the date for the fall semester, but I believe we're sitting at, I believe it's December 3rd. I can check on that really quickly for you. Technology is wonderful. Let's see. Actually, I'm sorry. It's December 2nd. The deadline would be December 2nd at 3 p.m. Thesis and dissertation hours. This is important. You must be enrolled in thesis or dissertation hours in any semester you work or your document on your document or to receive assistance. This includes the semester you submit your final document to the graduate school. So this can vary. Some people are in, it depends on your program. Some people are in 3 credit hours. Some people are in 1 credit hour, but you do have to be enrolled in thesis or dissertation hours in any semester you're working on your document or receiving assistance on your document or submitting your document for graduation to the graduate school. For writing style, so this is, for example, MLA, APA, Chicago style, etc. Any discipline-specific committee-approved writing style is acceptable by the graduate school. It must be used consistently through the document. We don't want you to flip-flop between styles, so make sure you're staying true to your citation style. In the event that the graduate school's template differs from the writing style requirements, you're going to want to defer to the template. This happens oftentimes in the references section and maybe a couple other places, maybe the table of contents, etc. But you're going to want to go by the requirements of the template in certain areas versus your citation style. The nice part about the template is that as you go through it, not only is it giving you an example of what the template or what your final document will look like, it gives you specific instructions, and I'll be going through that with you. Now, just to be clear, when we are reviewing your final submission or the people that review your preliminary draft that provides formatting assistance, and I'll talk to you about that later, we do not check that your citation styles are correct. That is up to you and your faculty advisor to make sure that, that your citation style throughout is adhering to the guidelines of your citation style. So for required formatting, you can download the graduate school's formatting template on our website. There are two versions. One is Word and one is LaTeX. It's a preference. Oftentimes you'll be in a program where the faculty member will say, I prefer for you to use LaTeX. That's fine, but both of those options are there. So they're either, again, in Word format or LaTeX for download. The 3-essay template, just FYI, is only available in MS Word. So the standard template is used for the majority. That's the majority that we get for thesis and dissertation documents. A manuscript covering a single project presented in specific chapters. There's a narrative progression from chapter to chapter, etc. So as far as the sequence of your document per the template, you will have a title page. The copyright and dedication page are optional. You will have an acknowledgements, an abstract, a table of contents. You will have a list of tables and list of figures if they are present in the document. Then, of course, the body of your manuscript, appendices, if it's present in your document, references, and a vita. So the only two pages that are optional to include are copyright and dedication. Everything else must be in there. So let's go through the title page. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to want to use the template for correct spacing. Please make sure to keep the spacing as close to what you see as possible. As you go through the template, everything in red are the instructions for the page, which means that once you have typed in the information, you would delete the red parts of the page. Now, one thing that I recommend is that you don't necessarily dump your information into the template. My recommendation is you use this as a guide, not as the file that you put your information into. And the reason is because formatting can get a little off depending on how your document's formatted, and then you take your document and you throw it into our template, and then sometimes things can get a little off. So my recommendation is to use this as a guide, not use this as your document. You're going to want to include your previous degrees after your name. These are kind of common mistakes. So your previous degree after your name. So a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science, a Master of Science, Master of Arts, etc. Whatever your previous degree, the one you currently have, is what you will put after your name. The name of the degree department is worded in the catalog. List of committee members. If you have 2 supervising professors or 2 co-chairs, you would list each of them as a co-chair. Otherwise, you just simply put their first name, last name, comma, PhD. After that, the last section, you have the month and the year awarded, and the month and the year degree awarded is the month and the year of your graduation. So our example in there, I think, is August of something. So you would obviously need to change that to, for this semester, would be December of 2022. Just understand that the date in the document is not the date that you defended, that you did your final defense. It's the date of, it's the month and year of graduation, which is either December, May, or August. I think the most common mistakes that I see on this page is primarily the spacing. It's not the spacing in between sections. It's actually making like the full page double spaced, for example. And as you see, every section is single spaced. The other piece that is most commonly is the most common mistake is the title of the document. Title of the document needs to be in, that's called inverted pyramid form, where the first line is longer than the second line and so on. It does need to be double spaced. It does need to be in all caps, and it does need to be in bold. Copyright page is optional. However, regardless of if you register a copyright or not, so which registering a copyright, just make sure that you have documentation of your copyright. But in reality, any type of manuscript produced by a person and published is automatically copyrighted. So in a sense, even though this is not a required page, you don't have to include it. Everyone has a copyright on their document. It just depends on if you formally register it or not. But regardless, everyone's document is copyrighted. You'll want to, you can purchase the registration, which means you will have legal documentation of the copyright. You can purchase that through ProQuest. This money does not go to UTSA. This money actually goes to the federal government for copyright registration. Page is counted. This page is counted as a page number, much like the title page, but there are no page numbers on the title page or the copyright page. And the last point, if you do not purchase a copyright, delete this page. That actually is true, yet not true. Again, everyone's document, once it's published, is automatically copyrighted under the law. However, to have formal legal documentation and to have your document registered for copyright, that's when you would pay for it. So it's up to you ultimately whether you want to have this page or not. It doesn't hurt anything to have it, so I would recommend you leave it in. The dedication page, again, is optional. This is something that's usually a little bit more personal than the acknowledgements page. So a lot of times on this page, people will thank, I've seen people thank their kids, their spouse, their parents. I've seen people thank their pets. So it's up to you. This page is optional, but just note that it is single spaced and italicized, meaning the body of the document, not the header. No more than 7 to 10 lines. It's usually pretty short. The page is counted, but again, no page number is typed on this page either. If you choose not to include a dedication, you would delete this page. Acknowledgements follows the dedication. This is going to be the first page with a page number. Now, this is where it can get a little confusing. So let's say you have a title page, you have a copyright page, you have a dedication. That means the acknowledgements page will start with lowercase Roman numeral 4. Okay. But if you are missing either, if you choose not to include either the copyright or the dedication, this would begin with lowercase Roman numeral 3. If you don't include the copyright or the dedication page, this would begin with lowercase Roman numeral 2. The length of the acknowledgements is 3 pages. It is going to be double spaced. At the end of the acknowledgements, right above the page number, whether it's 1 page, 2 pages, or 3 pages, at the end above the page number, you would again do the month and year of your graduation. So for this semester, again, it would be December 2022. I talked about the page numbers. For acknowledgements, it is the recognition and acknowledgement of professional or financial assistance normally. Some people do include some personal pieces in this because they decided not to include a dedication, and that's fine. If you want to include, if you want to get a little bit more personal with what you're saying, that is absolutely fine. So following this is going to be your abstract. Your abstract is the title of your document is also going to be included. It needs to be formatted exactly the same as your title page. The title is centered in bold, all caps, inverted pyramid, and of course, depending on how many lines it is, it needs to remain in the inverted pyramid format. Underneath that, you're going to include the degree you're currently working on listed after your name. So this is where it differs from the title page. So after your name, it's the degree you're currently working on. So MS, PhD, EDD, MA, etc. Your supervising professor, so that's your chair. And you would not put Dr. This, well, I like having my name. So Dr. John Schaefer. I'm not a doctor, but it sounds good, doesn't it? Instead, it would be John Schaefer, comma, PhD or EDD, for example. You're going to want to make sure your abstract text is no more than 250 words or about one and a half pages double spaced. Your table of contents. This, you do not want to single space this page. Per our requirements for the template, this does need to be double spaced. So the titles must appear exactly as they do in the text. Leader dots need to be between the title and the page number. The only place that there's no leader dots or page number is the Vita entry, simply because the Vita page has no page number per our template. If you are including subtitles, that's fine, but it's an all or nothing situation. If you have subtitles included on your table of contents for chapter 1, then you also need to make sure to include all subtitles for chapter 2, subtitles for chapter 3, etc. So make sure that before you delve into it, because it obviously can make your chapter long or your table of contents longer and longer and longer. Ultimately, the format of your table of contents and what to include is going to be determined by a discussion with you and your faculty chair. Your list of tables and list of figures are going to be formatted identically. Of course, if you do not have tables or figures or both in your document, you are not going to include a list of tables or a list of figures. So if you don't have tables or figures or both, you'd want to remove these pages from the document or not include them in the document. It is the list of tables and list of figures are formatted very similarly to the table of contents. It is going to be double spaced. You would do whatever the table number is. So some people have simply table 1, table 2. Some people have it by chapter. So table 1.2, table 1.3, table 1.4, etc. And then you would put the title of your table, leader dots, and the page number that the table is found on. Now, I would suggest doing the table of contents, the list of tables, and the list of figures, actually formatting it and putting in all the information when your document is complete. And the reason is that as you go through and you are editing your document, you are deleting things, you are moving things around, that's going to adjust where possibly tables and figures are located, or the page number a chapter starts on, or a subtitle, etc. And so what happens is you're having to do double work. Is you've decided, okay, well, first run through, completed the document. I'm just going to fill out my whole table of contents, list of tables and list of figures. And then what happens again is you go through and edit, and then things change, and then you forget to go back and change the page numbers on these various pages, and then ultimately you submit and it's incorrect. Now, again, we are looking for, when we're looking at your final document, or you're having a preliminary draft review of your document, we are looking for that you are meeting all formatting requirements. We're not checking that, in fact, table 1 is on page 3. We're not looking at that. That is your responsibility. So you want to make sure that this information is correct. There has been a couple times where by accident, a person reviewing a document has caught it, but again, we're not looking for that. So that ultimately is your responsibility. List of figures formatted exactly the same, so I'm not going to go into any more detail about the list of figures. So your body of text obviously starts next. The title of your documents are all going to be, the title of your chapters are all going to be formatted similarly, where it's going to be in all caps. You're going to have chapter 1, colon, and then the title of the chapter. Titles of chapters are similar to the title of your manuscript. If it goes past 1 line, you need to maintain an inverted pyramid format. Some people say, well, I'd prefer to do chapter 1 with the number 1, colon. That's fine. We're not splitting hairs on that. Some people want to use a Roman numeral, chapter, Roman numeral 1, colon. That's fine, as long as it's in all caps and bold, double space if it goes beyond one line, and in an inverted pyramid. That's all we really care about. We realize that whether it be students or faculty members have a certain way that they prefer to see their document formatted. And so for those types of things, we're definitely not going to split hairs and say, well, you didn't spell out 1, so you need to fix that. You need to worry less about that. Definitely. This page is also going to be the page numbers change to Arabic numerals. So the actual number 1 will start the first page of chapter 1. So your body of text, you would format any subtitles according to your writing style. Some people center it, some people have it left justified, some people have them in all caps, some people have them, whatever, not bolded, some people have, ultimately it's determined by your writing style is what I'm trying to say. So whatever your writing style is, we don't split hairs for subtitles, as long as your subtitles remain formatted consistently through your document. That we will catch, and we'll make sure to ask you to make those changes to make sure it's consistent throughout. On this, you'll notice also we have an example of a table included in the document. Tables are labeled above your table regardless of the writing style. So regardless of what your writing style says, we need you to label your table. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, it just so happened. So label your table above the table. For appearance of tables, numbering, etc., you want to, or how the tables look, the actual tables, you want to refer to your writing style. Additionally, body of text, Chapters always begin on a new page. Do not continue them. Always on a new page for new chapters. This is an example of a figure. Figures are labeled below, regardless of the writing style. For the appearance, of course, same thing. For the appearance of your figures specifically, you would refer to your writing style, but for labeling, refer to the template. For appendices, appendix or appendices, depending on how many you have, this appears immediately after your text, but before the reference section. We get that problem a lot, or that mistake a lot, where the appendices are after the references, but in fact, in this case, the appendices are before the reference. The materials in your appendix are peripheral, but obviously relevant to the main body of content. If you have IRB approval, that memo would be included in the appendices, and then of course, whatever else you want to include. Some people will have just appendix and it's one page, and that's fine. You can also have multiple appendix, but it would be like Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C, stuff like that. Just make sure that it is accurately noted in your table of contents. Don't just put appendices, pages, or starting on page, let this one 5, but of course it's going to be a lot further along than page 5. But some people will say, oh, well, it's my appendix, page 5, and it's like 10 pages long with about like 10 different appendices. We need those appendices listed on the table of contents if you have more than one. References, this is also a place where we see a lot of common mistakes because people defer to their writing style versus the template. You can also, of course, some people, it's references, obviously works cited or bibliography. Those are the 3 common headings. You can format the entries according to your writing style. What we require is a double space between each entry. So as it's stated here. So sometimes what happens is we'll get something like this, but it'll be all single spaced. And we'll send it back to the student and say, and I'll say, there needs to be a double space between each entry in your references. And then what they do is they double space the whole thing, which is fine. Excuse me. That's fine. But all we're asking for is to include a double space between each entry. You don't have to double space the whole thing. So again, totally up to you. The vita is the last page of your document. This page is required. There is no page number. This is not where you would include a curriculum vita. This is basically a third person biographical statement. So it's a summary. You put like he studied, not I studied, or she studied, or they studied. Do not include contact information like your email address or phone numbers. This is just simply, like I said, a third person biographical statement. Usually it's maybe 1 to 2 paragraphs. It's not very long. But again, as you noted, or as I noted before, everything through the document has these the red print in our template, which provides you all the instructions for that particular page. So you cannot go wrong. So let's talk about the 3 essay template briefly. We also call it the multiple essay template. So it's not just, sometimes it's 2 essays or 2 journal articles, sometimes it's 5, but the general concept is a 3 essay template. And each essay will have its own title page, body of chapters and sections, and appendices and references. So it's broken up a little differently. And actually, each essay, I'm sorry, that's a typo. Each essay does not necessarily have its own title page. So we'll go through it here. So here we have the formatting sequence is similar So we have the title page, copyright dedication is optional, acknowledgements, abstract. The abstract would cover all of the essays in the document, table of contents, which was where you will list, it's pretty much formatted similarly, only the difference is instead of chapters, you have essays, and then possibly sub-chapters under the essays, list of tables, list of figures, if present, if they're present in the document, body of manuscript for each essay, and then your vita. So let's look through this briefly. So the title page is exactly the same. So I'm not going to go over that again. Title page, exactly the same, lack of page number, correct. Copyright, again, same, optional. Dedication is the same, yet optional. Acknowledgements is the same. This is where, again, first page number of the document. Abstract is the same, only you would include additional information based on your 3 or more or less separate essays included in the document. Table of contents is slightly different. So as you can see on the right, you still have it double spaced. Titles need to appear as they do in your text. Each essay will appear with its chapters nested as entries beneath it. So that's what I mentioned before. This is essay 1. And we do request that you do not call it chapter 1, that you do call it essay 1. You could call it journal 1 if you prefer, but the standard is to call it an essay. So if you call it essay 1 and then the title of the essay. Everything else is formatted the same, but notice how if you look under like essay 1, for example, you have the introduction, the chapter, body section, the conclusion, appendices for that essay, and then the references for that essay. And then you go into essay 2. And the subtitle issue is the same thing as with the standard template. If you include it for one, you need to include it for all. List of tables is formatted slightly different, much like the table of contents where you have your list of tables broken down by essay. So just make sure to include the essay number and title, which is again different from the standard. And then the list of figures is formatted exactly the same. Please note the list of figures and list of tables in both the standard template and the 3 essay each start on a new page. So you should not have list of tables and list of figures on the same page. So essay 1, we're going to go through this rather quickly. Essay 1, you're going to have essay 1 in the title of the document on its own page. So this would be page 1 of the body of your manuscript. And then past that, you then go into your document, or excuse me, the body of essay 1. Now, one of the things that some people have done is that they'll not only have the title here, but then they'll have the title here. So instead of introduction or whatever you're going to call this, they would have essay 1 again, and that we only need it once on its own page to introduce the essay. And then you have the body of your document. Again, I'm not going to go through all this because the subtitles are, again, based on your writing style. The tables are labeled the same. Tables are above, figures are below, etc. So everything else, once you get into the body, is the same. And then you have your appendices if you have appendices, and then you always will include your references at the end of each essay. Then once the first essay is done, then we go into essay 2 and essay 3 or 4 or 5, which are formatted exactly the same as essay 1. Vita, is always going to be at the very end. You do not need a vita at the end of each essay. The vita is going to be at the very end of your document. Again, no page number, same formatting requirements and content. Okay, so let's talk about formatting details. Keep previously published material. If you have previously published material in your document, this could be something that you have published, something that you are using. It's usually something you have published, and you're going to have 2 italicized paragraphs. You can find these in the prep guidelines, and you will include those 2 italicized paragraphs in the acknowledgements, on the acknowledgements page. You do not have to make up these 2 paragraphs. The paragraphs are actually there in the template. If you do not have previously published material, you can just delete those paragraphs, but those paragraphs will always be italicized and single spaced. And then beneath the chapter title, include a short statement stating the chapter was previously published, where, when, and the names and any co-authors. This happens more with the 3 essay template, having previously published material. But sometimes you will have published a chapter of your document, of this, like the standard template, you've already published it. So it's literally just contacting the publisher for copyright information or permission. Oftentimes the publisher doesn't care. So what I'll get is, sometimes I'll get the question, well, I contacted the publisher, they don't care, so do I need to include their permission? And the answer is no. If they don't care, then you're not required to get permission, obviously. Margins for your document. It's 1 inch all the way around. You need to be aware of that throughout your document. You cannot have text, figures, or tables bleeding into any of the margins. If we see that something's bleeding into the margin, we will send it back to you to remedy that issue. And this is through the entire document, from the title page all the way to the vita. Excuse me. That you're going to want to have 1 inch margins all the way around. Spacing, obviously for the title page, for most pages, refer to the template. You can have normally the body of the text is going to be double spaced. You can do 1.5 spacing, which is acceptable. However, single spacing is only acceptable in certain parts of your document. Also, with spacing, the spacing, the areas that may be optionally single space are quotations, footnotes, lengthy table descriptions or figure descriptions. The following entries may be single space with a space between each entry, and obviously always refer to the template. Bibliography, references, table of contents, list of tables, list of figures. But what I always say is, I can provide you all this information, but all this information is included in the template, and if you download the guidelines and FAQs. Typeface, we do require Times New Roman or Arial. No other typeface is accepted. If we see some fancy typeface or even Calibri, we will send it back and ask you to change it to Times New Roman. Times New Roman is the most common. Occasionally we do get Arial, but just note that if it's Arial, it needs to not be 12-point font because it's too big, but Times New Roman would be 12-point font. Font size, like I said, 12 footnotes, font size would be 10. Page numbers, font size is 12. For page numbers, Times New Roman or Arial is up to you. Microsoft Word will use the program's default font or page numbers, so be sure to update it. So if your document is in Times New Roman, you're going to want to make sure that the page numbers are also Times New Roman. It looks a little off. Table and figure labels may be 10-point font as well, but we do ask that, again, the keyword, the magic word is consistency. So if you have a figure or two figures or a table or two tables in chapter 1 that your descriptor for the tables or your title is in 10-point font, then it needs to be in 10-point font throughout the document. And the reverse is true with 12-point font. So just be consistent. As I mentioned, tables and figures are two distinct items. Tables are numbered and labeled above. Figures are numbered and labeled below in the document. If any of your figures or tables continue on to a subsequent page, then you on the subsequent page at the top or below, depending on if it's a table or a figure, you would put, for example, table 1 continued or figure 1 continued. Page numbers. So your page number, title page, copyright, and dedication if included. Or excuse me, no page number on your title page, copyright or dedication. Lowercase Roman numerals on acknowledgements, abstract table of contents, list of tables and list of figures. Some people I've seen, there are special cases where it's like list of terms, list of abbreviations, list of whatever. Some people will ask, is it okay for us to include that? Either your writing style requires it or your faculty member wants to see it. That's fine. We don't have an issue with it. Just make sure that if you're including a list of abbreviations or a list of defined words or whatever, that it is formatted like the list of tables and list of figures. Arabic numerals, first page of the text begins on page 1, endnotes if included, appendices if included, and references. So that's Arabic numerals. No page number on the Vita page. All page numbers need to be at the bottom center of the page, regardless of your writing style. Now, this is where people get into trouble. This is another place, which is landscape pages. So landscape pages, if they show up in your document looking like this, that's fine. It's fine to include landscape pages in your document. However, just remember that when the document is published, the page number, this is actually the bottom of the page over here. Okay, so if this were to be published as is, the page number would end up in the right margin looking weird. So we do need you to make sure that you have your, either you can adjust your landscape page to a portrait, or the other option is that you move your page number manually over to the left margin of a landscape page, centered and facing out. Okay, this can be done magically with page breaks. We do in the FAQ document that you can download off the graduate school website and help guide. It actually walks you through how to accomplish this task if you're having issues. So I'm going to wait to take questions. So we're going to keep busting through. I'm going to wait to keep questions or get questions at the end. So let's talk about formatting assistance. I highly recommend that you take part in a preliminary draft review with the UTSA library team. There is a team of staff. They are tremendous. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And there's a full team, I think of anywhere between 4 to 6 people that review the documents and review your document, your preliminary draft, as we call it, and they look for any formatting abnormalities to make sure that when you are submitting your final document, there is as little issue as possible. So you can set up an appointment with them by emailing circulation@utsa.edu to book an appointment. All appointments are virtual. So it's either, if you prefer to just do it via email, they can do that. If you want to set up a Zoom session or a Teams session, they can do that as well. But just please, for your sanity, and to relieve any stress you have at the very end when you're submitting your final document, do the preliminary draft review. And you do not have to have a completed manuscript to do this. So it does not have to be, you do not have to have completed your defense. You do not have to have a fully formed final document, just enough, a few chapters, the first section completed, the vita included, some references, just so that they can make sure that you're on the right track. So preparation guidelines, as I mentioned, there is a preparation guidelines and FAQ document and a troubleshooting how-to resources for Microsoft Word document. All of these can be found on the graduate school website. And I'm going to do a very nice thing for everyone that's in the session today. I always send up a follow-up email. I'll send you a link to this video. I will attach my presentation as well. And I will send you direct links to all of these documents, because that's the nice person that I am. No, actually, it really is. Yeah, they're wonderful resources. They really spell everything out for you. And, you know, our job is to make sure that you guys, all of y'all are as successful as possible. So submission information and final requirements. This is the last section, and then I will turn it over to you all for questions. If you still have questions after consulting the template, the web resources, your students, your supervising professor, and having a preliminary draft review, of course, we do encourage you to contact the graduate school. You can email gradengage@utsa.edu, and we will answer your questions. Normally, by this point, it's usually you have questions about the final submission guidelines, and that's fine. So for final submission requirements, you submit only one electronic copy of your manuscript to the ProQuest website. And that's not an accurate deadline, but it is obviously always Fridays at 3 p.m. We also need doctoral candidates to complete the survey of earned doctorates online at on the graduate school's website. There is a link. So we do need you to do this. Again, you don't need to wait till the very end. If you have defended your thesis, or excuse me, if you defended your dissertation, doctoral students, you can fill out the survey at any time. For ProQuest, you would submit to ProQuest after your defense and only in your graduating semester. If you are deferring your graduation to a later semester, please do not submit your document until your graduating semester. You, of course, create an account, log in. The on-screen instructions are very self-explanatory. There is no fee to upload your thesis or dissertation for final review. If you include add-ons, that's when you're paying some money. And you do need to upload it as a PDF, not a Word document. After submission, the graduate school will access your document and check if it meets formatting standards. Depending on the time of the semester, will depend on how quickly we get back to you. So right now, if you were to submit your document like on Monday, you'll probably get it back within 24 to 48 hours, maybe a little bit longer, but as you get closer to where we're starting to get more and more documents come in, it may take a little bit longer to get back to you. If your document requires additional formatting changes, once we do a final review, we will communicate with you through the ProQuest portal. So emails will be sent to you via ProQuest, and we line out the changes that need to be made. If you're good to go, if we check it and everything's perfect, no changes are required, you'll also receive that email through the ProQuest portal. The ProQuest publication options are a traditional, which costs you nothing. And then there's open access, which is meaning your document can be, there's a higher viewability to your document. So ultimately it's up to you if you want it traditional open access. I do get the question of, well, what if I don't want my document published immediately? If I want to put an embargo on publication, that's fine. I think the ProQuest allows you to delay publication up to 2 years. If you want it longer than that, you have to work through me in the graduate school. But again, you would email gradengage@utsa.edu. We then work with you with ProQuest, and then those additions can be, or those adjustments can be made. That's what I just discussed. If you want to order bound copies through ProQuest, this is not required. So hard copies, you can do a hardbound, a softbound, depending on the size, etc. You can include that. This obviously would cost money. If you just want a copy and you want to go to FedEx or Staples or the UPS store, I mean, that's fine as well. It's totally up to you. This is just a personal choice. Copyright registration through ProQuest is not required. There is a $75 fee. Again, as I mentioned before, this is, once your document is published, it's copyrighted under the law. However, if you want the copyright registered, that's where you would pay. It is entirely up to you. It's something to talk to your professor about. You can also, if you have information, if you want more information, you can go to copyright.gov. Survey of earned doctorates, we talked about. Scheduling your defense. You want to make sure to work with your committee to try to make sure that your defense is scheduled at least 2 weeks prior to the final submission deadline. If your defense is not scheduled prior to the deadline, this can affect graduation plans. So we just really, this is really to make sure you have a slightly stress-free experience as you are in your final semester. If your defense is, let's say, a week or a day before the final deadline, that causes a lot of unneeded undue stress on you, because once you do your defense, oftentimes there is changes that your committee wants you to make. Not all the time, but sometimes. And so then that's extra work you have to do. So you want to make sure you can try to have that buffer. Let me make this very clear when it comes to faculty committees and even your chair. Everybody has a lot going on. I see it as your job to go to your faculty or your committees and light a fire under them and say, when are we scheduling my dissertation defense? Don't wait until the very end of the semester and think, oh, we probably should do this, because you may have faculty members that are traveling or don't have access to internet and can't join virtually. Oh, that's the other thing. Please note that according to university requirements for a final defense, not the entire committee does not have to be present in person. You can have people join and have a hybrid defense to where you have some in person and some virtually. You are allowed to do that. So, some faculty in college, not colleges, but some faculty may not know that, but in fact, that is the case. So you do not have to wait until all faculty are in the city of San Antonio to be able and can attend in person. So just try to make sure that, I would say, what are we at? We're in September. get with them now. Get with them now and say, okay, when are we going to schedule this? Certificate of completion is not anything that for thesis or dissertation, it's nothing that you have to worry about. This will be handled by your department. They may ask you, like the admin may say, hey, can you take this to your committee and get their signatures? And that's fine. But ultimately, as far as submission to the graduate school, that is handled by your department. Ooh, that is it. So I am going to unshare my screen and answer any questions that you all may have.